Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to come to you guys with a more advice-based video because as a person, especially an American who's done this now 3 times between the US and Italy, I wanted to be sort of a guiding light to those of you who are now going through or maybe considering going through the same situation. Firstly, I do want to say I am not a licensed realtor, nor am I a legal expert, so I'm just giving you my experience and hopefully this can be helpful to you to be able to really confidently move through the process. It's not easy, but definitely takes practice and it takes experience and definitely having the right resources. So let's first dive into documents. If you don't know already, and it hasn't been obvious to you at this point, I am an American citizen, which is an important part of this puzzle because in order to purchase property, to have my name on the deed, or let alone to finance a home, I need to have Italian residency, okay? Getting my dual citizenships. It's important for my American viewers or foreign viewers who do not have that. You don't necessarily have to be a citizen to have residency, right? To apply for your permesso di soggiorno or to have that, especially if you're military coming over. It's part of our government's agreement with the Italian government to provide that residency and those documents to us. So that's something that if you're military, you don't really have to worry about. The steps that it takes for you to get fully registered and involved with, right? Embedded? Like
2 hours later.
Integrated into the base. There is such thing as reciprocity. Because Italians are able to buy property in the US, we're also allowed to buy property here in Italy. Through residency, you get what's called the codice fiscale, which is your social security number, okay? And that is important if you want to be, again, added to the deed or being able to go through with getting an Italian bank account to even start financing. And that comes with residency. So I am an Italian resident, so I do have my codice fiscale. And that allows me to be able to do a multitude of things such as healthcare access. So this is something that was advised to us through this process. You also need an Italian bank account if you're going to be financing your property. And most importantly, before getting started, you will need to have the patience, I'm telling you. And that's something that's going to be a constant here in Italy. No matter what you're doing, whether it's a big purchase or a small purchase or just literally anything, I can appreciate the fact that things move a little bit slowly here, and that people really like to take their time and put a lot of effort into the things that they do. So things don't just get done in a rushed manner. People are really invested in like the services they are providing, the products they are providing. Things take time and there's a lot of bureaucracy. That's the other reason, really one of the larger reasons, especially when you're in the home buying process, especially if you're having renovations done. You have to go at it with the idea that it may take a year before you're officially comfortable and all of the renovations and the projects and everything you had planned are solidified and into your home. And that's one thing that correct me if I'm wrong, if you work in this industry or have any familiarities in this industry, I feel that they don't keep things in stock at the same level like in the US. And that is part of the problem when it comes to ordering things, and why more people tend to drive to Padua to go to IKEA to get their things and have it delivered because it's gonna be just faster than going through a local company. And the tricky thing about it though when it comes to buying a car and buying property is that specifically with buying a car is what you're gonna run into, and we recently ran into this as we were looking at like the Yaris, Toyota, and we were trying to make a purchase and wanting to do financing, right? So when going to them and explaining to them that you are American and that you work with the base and that that's where like your employer is, and like we have an agreement with our government that when there's a purchase over $100 that it takes off the IVA, which is the 22% tax that is paid on anything that's over a certain amount, right? Or like furniture and things like that. As Americans working here through the base, there's an agreement between the governments that says, hey, when we have a specific document that you have to go to legal to have drawn up. So that's important to recognize and be able to communicate, and giving them the actual contact information so they can talk to them directly is sometimes easier. So the next one I feel goes without saying in reference to the codice fiscale that when you're wanting to add another person onto your deed of the house, so to have equitable or equal ownership, they're going to also need a codice fiscale. They're going to also need their documents. And if you want to add someone who doesn't have active residency, that can be very problematic and very expensive for you. You don't want to spend possibly around 6,000 euros to add someone to a deed. When it comes to paying for your Italian property, I'm assuming that you probably don't have a little over or probably around $200,000 euros in your bank account, just liquid and ready to go. If you do, then kudos to you. And if you want to help pay my student loans off, definitely let me know, because they're coming for me soon. You will need to get an Italian bank account. I will be leaving the name of that bank so you can see the bank that we went with. We had a pretty good experience with them, but there are tons of different bank options. You're not limited to just one who's used to dealing with the base. And talk to at least 3 different banks and see what options you have as far as like how much they're willing to lend you and what your APR is gonna look like and things like that. But just know, none of this is sponsored. I'm not getting paid by them to mention them in this video. I just wanted to mention them because we had a good experience with them, and you know, they're used to dealing with Americans. It's one of those things that just makes life easier. Work smarter, not harder. So firstly, the bank is going to require that you buy shares. So this is what my husband explained to me is quite normal to solidify the union between you and the bank. And it's really just a way to create more security for them. That it's usually, you know, not anything outrageous as far as like the amount of shares they require you to buy, but it's something, it's a discussion that that's gonna come up, and it's something that I think is important to mention because it may be shocking to you. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, you know, this foreign bank is making me buy shares. What does this mean? Like, are they trying to scam me? It's not a scam, it's normal. So another important thing to remember is that the concept of credit scores and credit cards is not held strongly here. You could live your whole life in Italy not having one credit card ever, and really just using cash, or like now obviously people use more debit. The concept of credit is something that's kind of lost when you're comparing it to the way that we use credit in the US. And so accessing large amounts of credit is not easy here. Getting a credit card is a very difficult task. It's not as easy as like, I got, you know, this Discover or something like that sent me something in the mail. They're probably gonna hear this YouTube and send me more, but they sent me something in the mail and asked me to get one of their credit cards or something like that, or Amex or whatever. It's not that easy or simple here to do those things. It's on a very different scale, okay? So that's one thing you need to understand, and that's why it's a little bit more challenging when it comes to negotiating and getting your loan for your home. So just keep that in mind, okay? And then the other part of that is that you want to be prepared to come out of pocket. Military folks out there who have like their VA loan, I'm not 100% sure if the VA loan applies in these situations when you're buying overseas here, but I know that when it comes to the buying process, generally speaking, you need to expect to put some money down. Expect to have money available to pay the notary, to make your down payment, and to also pay your realtor. That's all, basically that's all your closing costs. But don't let that deter you, because still you're able to use your housing allowance plus your COLA as a way to help pay your mortgage. So what they'll do when you go to the housing office, they'll look at the max that you're allowed, right, for your housing allowance. And then they'll say, okay, is this house in our budget? Are we gonna be able to, in 10 years, pay off based on the housing allowance that you're currently getting, okay? They'll do their little calculations and then they'll approve it or not. You have to get the house approved through the base if you want that to, if you want to be able to use your allowance to pay off your mortgage. You have residency paperwork, you've talked with the housing office to see what you're capable of doing, and you are just ready to get out there. Definitely make sure that you have 3 things: a good realtor, a good translator that is a third party, 3, this helpful website I'm gonna put in right here that can kind of get you seeing where the market is and kind of what prices you're really looking at. Because obviously things still have to be appraised, just like anywhere else, but you wanna make sure that like they're not trying to upsell you, you know. It's one of those things where you have to make sure that you are coming with as as much knowledge as you can to the table so that you can protect yourself and your assets. In the same instance that if you are a female, unfortunately, we still have this issue where when we're going to the car shop, for example, to buy a car or to get an oil change or any type of maintenance done, the assumption is that we don't know what we're doing, or that like we need these people to mansplain things to us. And you know what? Like sometimes I just don't want to change my oil. I can do it myself. But again, it's the assumption that the person who is selling the item to you or the service knows more than you. So you want to make sure you go in there at least with some knowledge. And that's what I'm hoping I can give to you today. Getting a realtor who you can trust. I would Can I speak today? My goodness, I am really struggling. I would definitely host interviews. I like to interview people who offer services before I like commit to a service. And so I would at least see 3 different realtors if you have the possibility. When you get your realtor, stay on them. So it's one of those things that in Italy, things run a little bit different than what you're used to probably in the States. For my American viewers, like putting pressure is important, and knowing that you have the ability to withhold money. That's something that I think more people need to realize, is that you can negotiate. The whole process is a negotiation. Never forget that you're still negotiating, and even up until 120 days, you are still within the window of negotiation. Even if you bought the house and it's been 30 days, until you reach that 120 day mark, you're still able to say, you know what? This ain't working for me, sis. Like, I gotta go. You have up until 120 days, even after signing that contract, to renegotiate your contract, to ask for something, and to make sure that you stay on them about what needs to be done. If you're agreed to something and it wasn't delivered, you can argue that. And another thing that's important to remember when you're in the negotiation process, that when you are, agreeing to the price on something, double check their numbers all the time. Even if it's hard for you to understand, maybe Italian is not your mother tongue, let alone a language that you know, get a translator and get a third party translator, someone who you trust. You want to make sure that it says things like, if you're waiting for a renovation to be done, if you're waiting for something to be built, whatever the case may be, saying, I'm going to withhold X amount of euros until this work is finished. One thing to pay attention to when you're looking at these houses is looking at the efficiency grade. You don't want a house that's between D and F, and you need to ask your realtor. So for Italians, they will know this and they will ask these things, right? But for a lot of people who are coming from other countries, maybe who don't have this knowledge or this experience, you're gonna want to ask, what grade level is it in? You want preferably an A would be great, but anything between A and a C is is good. But D and F, you don't want that unless there is a written agreement and plan that the condominium has, which is the like a HOA basically, that says, hey, on this date this year, we're doing a special coating around the building to increase the efficiency level. Or there's been special work done in the walls and the ceiling, or they've done significant renovations to bring up the grade quality. Unless that's been done, you want to kind of steer away from that unless you're willing to pay for those renovations. Another really important thing to take note of when buying a house here in Italy, how big is the garage? When you have, so this building is quite old, okay? When you have older Italian units that haven't, like where the garage hasn't been renovated, you want to understand, okay, can I fit my car inside? And maybe even bring your car and like try to fit it in the garage, measure your car and then measure the width and the length of the garage, because you don't want to be in my mom's situation where like her car, she just got a brand new car and it's actually a little bit too big, like literally like by this much is too big, and so we're getting a new car. But you want to make sure that before you buy your house that okay, I can actually fit my car into my garage. Not to like call my mom out, but houses are made a little bit differently here, and especially if they're older houses, because our building that we have in Villa Varla, which is from like 2005, so it's at a time where like they're able to compensate more inside the garage. So you want to keep that in mind when you're shopping. So now you're in the actual negotiation process. Finally, you've made it here to the compra-vendita negotiation. You're also probably thinking that this probably is going to take no more than 30 minutes to an hour. Like literally, when we bought our house in the States, it took us like 20 minutes, maybe 15, and we were in and out. In Italy, it's a lot more complicated than that. I feel like I keep saying that when I'm referencing Italy, but it's true, you know, unfortunately. So be prepared to spend at least 2 to 3 hours. Typically, this will take place at the notary's office. In this meeting, you will have your realtor, the realtor of the seller obviously, yourself, and your translator or interpreter, if you have one with you or if you need one with you, and the notary themselves. Oh, as well as both banks' representatives will be there as well. So this goes for getting married in Italy, let alone any type of purchasing. If you don't have a certain level of Italian language, they will ask that you have a translator with you to make sure that you actually fully understand what you're signing and what is happening in the meeting. If you have a certain level of Italian understanding and you can prove that to them, then they will suggest you don't need one. You will all be seated at the table and the notary will start reading out the paper. Now, when I tell you these documents are front and back, 0 spaces in between, just like goes on for days. Like it really feels that way, but sometimes like they will do a synopsis of certain areas just to move along. And the language is very little archaic. It's very dense and very complicated. A lot of legal jargon that even the realtors are like, I don't understand what this is saying. And the notary has to do it. That's why he or she is being paid to do this. Is they're going through and reading through everything. If it's been an hour, they may advise you to take a short pause, drink some water, and then start again. And making sure that all parties are aware of the history of the realty agencies, the history of the home itself, when it was purchased, like who's the original proprietor, and you know what renovations were done, and all these things, and all the different codes and stuff associated with the house. And the same is done also for the banks. Then lastly, you will have the signing and the transferring of funds, which everything, be prepared, will be done via check. There are some in the beginning, like you have your wire transfers, of course, but in this particular instance, when you're paying the notary, you're paying the realtor and everything, that's also written in the contract. So if you decide later, you know what, actually I want to make a wire transfer, I want to pay you on next Tuesday instead of this Tuesday, like you can't do that. But your bank representative will do that for you. They'll write your checks and then they'll hand it to the notary, who will then hand it to the respective people. Also, there's like this fun game of pass the paper around and sign, because everyone has to sign the entire agreement. So it goes through the whole table and you sign everything like paper by paper after she's read he or she or they or have read everything, and then you kind of like pass it around and do your signing. So, and then just like that, you bought a house in Italy. So yeah, you know, if you really love Italy, you love Italian architecture, and you love really relishing your dolce vita, then it will be nothing but a big reward in itself to finally have your beautiful home and be comfortable and all that jazz. So, well, that's all I have for you guys as far as what are some of my tips and some things that I've experienced and just how the overall process looked and felt and worked. And if you have any questions, definitely leave them down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your experiences and any advice that you would give moving forward that you wish you had or you would give yourself if you were telling yourself what you know now about the house buying process here in Italy. Leave me a like, a subscribe, and definitely ring the bell so that next time I post a video, you can be the first one to know. Isn't that cool, right? All right, ciao for now, guys.